So the design industry has changed really a lot in the last 10 years or so, and especially in the last three with the emergence of generative AI. So I'm gonna be interviewing some design professionals at the expo today. I'm also going to get some insights into my own industry. My company is sending me to take photos of furniture and learn about what's out there. Basically, a lot of the big name brands are going to be displaying, and I'm going to see a lot of people that I know from school and my network.
To get to Shanghai, I first had to go to the train station in Hangzhou. It was a beautiful sunny day and I really enjoyed the drive and seeing some interesting cars on the road. The train station in Hangzhou is giant. I'm always in awe every time I go, just the sheer size and the amount of people inside the station. Riding trains in China is super convenient. To get from Hangzhou to Shanghai, it only takes about 50 minutes on the bullet train. And again, just fantastic scenery out the window, just tall buildings the whole way. It's really interesting to watch them go by. I usually am able to secure a seat, but if you're booking trains on the national holidays, it can be quite challenging. Once I got to Shanghai, I went straight to the metro. It's always packed. There's a lot of young people working in companies in this city, so you have to really push your way in sometimes. I had to grab a Monster to recharge from the night before. I stayed up way too late editing. I noticed that the event was sponsored by Audi. Audi's really trying hard in the Chinese market to maintain its brand image since there's really fierce competition in the car industry at this point. And then I made my way into the expo. The first person I interviewed was a furniture designer who's a friend of my teacher's. He makes his own brand. It's all very black and minimalist. So let's hear what he has to say.
我叫赵云，我的品牌叫 interviewees，对，我是做家具和灯具设计，对，这是我的自己的个人品牌。
你做自己的品牌之前，你目前的工作经验是什么？
在我10年前做自己的品牌之前，我是在一个建筑工作室的产品部，对，为建筑工作室的项目、室内项目、空间项目做一些家具和灯具的产品。
那你目前是学建筑的，还是学了工业设计？
哦，我是学产品设计的。
然后后来怎么决定去做自己的品牌？
哇，这是个很好的故事。因为在项目里面做家具，虽然也是家具，但是我是觉得它的出发点不一样，空间来出发的做一个产品。但是呢，如果说我希望有一个更加干净的环境，是为了产品，为了人来去做家具。对，这个出发点完全不一样。因为以前的我，比如说打比方，我做一把椅子是为了空间做的，但是你出来是我自己来做品牌的话，是来为人来做的，这个出发点不一样。虽然可能大家的椅子最后都长4条腿，但是完全不一样。
作为一个设计品牌，你怎么样会去维护你的专利和知识遗产？
当然我们每一个都有我们的这个专利的申请。另外就是要提升它的制作难度，和一个我们的研发的速度，就是让别人的跟进就比较慢。当然呢，我觉得这不是首先说要考虑的。如果你想考虑要保护的话，那你就没有勇气去做东西了。如果一个设计师他如果怕 copy 的话，那他肯定不会成为设计师。对，你要有这份勇气。
现在在中国出来了很多的原创设计品牌，而且现在的行业很卷。你觉得为了长期生存，设计品牌要怎么样去定位自己？
我觉得长期生存的话，我觉得商业这个不是我们设计师能够控制的商业的流行。长期的话，我觉得要有一个长期主义，并不是为了潮流或者周期去做设计。如果你是为了潮流的话，你知道潮流是很快的。它很快就会结束，它很快会兴起，也会很快会结束，它的生命力会很短。如果你不是为了潮流去做，为了时间去做 timeless， 这样的话，我觉得可能就会更加长久。
对，我非常同意。有很多品牌和产品就很 timeless，然后你可以在你家里放20年，它都不会觉得是老东西。
是，没错。我们的这套，我今年带过来这套产品呢，我就是参考从博物馆里面找参考，因为它可能是几千年前的产品，被时间所选择的，并不是被人来选择的，所以这跟潮流没有关系。所以说你要去看时间，要去博物馆。
是的，是的，我非常同意。而且我觉得很多产品就是跟那些趋势去设计、去生产，然后它就跟时间也就会过去。
是的，是的。而且作为一个中国设计师的话，我们的工作经历和我们的眼界，现在看遍了世界上所有的精彩的设计，然后也去了世界上很多的地方，也真正的去用商业去跟国内国外的来做深度的交流。但是回过头来，我们这些技术、这些设计是个技术，是个 scale。当然，我们完成了这个技术的那个获得之后，发现文化最重要。
对，
比如说西方的文化，它可能有500年，对，文艺复兴之后有500年，但那个时候是中国的明朝。但在我们明朝作为中国历史还是比较新的历史，但是在明朝以前还有2000多年书籍记载的历史。所以说我是觉得中国的历史是我们作为中国设计师的一个优势，它是像一个连续的一本书，它没有断过，是一个长篇小说，是个很长的一个连续剧，它中间没有任何间断。而且除了文字记载以前，我们还有比如说三星堆，是吧？还有夏商周以前的那些挖出来的文物，而且没有文字的那个阶段，也是我们连续的文化，是对我们丰富的一个遗产。我觉得我们在这里面有太多挖掘。而且作为一个中国设计师，我非常非常开心的是，目前我们中国设计师对我们中国文化、东方文化才做了浅的一点点小的挖掘，其实还有大量的值得我们去深挖的一个地方。这是我觉得是作为设计师，而且是全世界的是一个幸事。
对，我觉得创意空间还是蛮大的，中国的市场。然后我很喜欢看一些中国原创设计品牌做一些比较适合中国人生活方式的产品，因为目前大部分设计品牌应该就是欧美的，比如说汽车嘛，现在国内的车企做了一些给车子加上了一些比较适合中国消费者的功能，然后可能欧美的车品牌都是跟不上这个节奏，所以说没有竞争优势。
是这样的，其实我们所有的科技是为了当下做适应。其实目前来说，生活变化很快。您刚才提到的汽车设计也是一样，我们很多国内的这个汽车设计，它做类似是符合我们当下的一个新的生活方式的一个尝试。我觉得这是一个勇气。对，所以说并不是说欧美的目前的汽车设计它就跟不上这个时代的发展，我觉得不是，它的技术要随着当下的生活方式的变化来去做及时的反馈和更新，可能这个是我们在中国这个市场上的可能一个比较积极的一个表现吧。对，
是的，对，好，谢谢你，谢谢你的分享，
谢谢。
Most of the people exhibiting at the expo were Chinese. Even the foreign companies had Chinese representatives at their booths. However, I did meet a few non-Chinese people also displaying their work. One example was this ceramicist from Ireland, and I decided to interview her. Let's see what she has to say.
So go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell me what you do and where you come from.
Hello, my name is Orla and I'm a ceramicist from Ireland.
Wonderful. And Orla, you are here in Shanghai at Design Shanghai exhibiting your ceramic work. What brought you to Shanghai to do an exhibition?
So I've been looking for a design show outside of Ireland and I came across Design Shanghai when searching online, and it stood out because my grandmother was actually born here in 1926. So
wow,
she'll be 99 in August, still alive, still here. And then when I looked up the show, it looked amazing. So I applied and now here I am.
That's amazing. So family heritage.
Yes.
That's very special. And you said it's your first time here in China. How has your experience been so far?
Yeah, it's been great. We haven't seen much yet because we've been at the show every day, but so far so good. Everyone's really lovely. We've had loads of really delicious food. It's been easy to get around and manage the language barrier as well, so it's been great.
People here are very friendly. And what have people, how have people been reacting to your ceramics work?
I think they're enjoying it. They keep saying it's very cute.
It is.
The colours are very different to Chinese pottery, so I think they're excited to see something different and bright and colourful.
I think it's very exciting to have a Western ceramicist here. China has a strong culture of ceramics that's really special, and I think it's really wonderful that you came to China to be able to experience that for yourself. Do you want to tell me about 2 or 3 of your objects?
Yeah, sure. So this is my mug. It gets a lot of attraction because of the lovely big handle. People don't know how to pick it up or how to grab it or how it works, but it's actually a really comfy mug.
It does look very comfy.
Yeah, so it's slip cast, so it's made with liquid clay in a mold.
That's amazing.
And all the colours actually in the clay. So this has a blue layer on the outside, and then there's a white layer in the middle to get the wall nice and thick, and then there's a green layer on the inside.
You know, I've noticed a trend with mugs lately. The weirder, the better.
Yes, for sure. Definitely funky mugs are in at the moment, I think.
That's great. So you're doing a great job leading that trend.
Yeah.
And show me the little detail that you have on the back of the mug.
So I have this little logo, our maker's mark here, and it's OCC, which are my initials, so Orla Culligan Ceramics.
Very special. It's important to have strong branding in design products.
Sure.
And one more. Show me one more of your objects.
I guess we have to go with the teapot. So this is my giant teapot. I think it works more maybe for an Irish audience who make a big pot of tea for the whole family rather than the tiny Chinese ones. But yeah, again, it's slip cast with coloured clay.
I love the seam mark on the edge of the teapot right here.
Yeah.
I saw the same thing on the mug. I think that gives it a really special feel.
Yeah, I like to show the process. So
I like the roughness.
yeah, it's for Chinese pottery especially, it's a bit rough and ready, but I like to show how it was made. So this is one of my ways of doing that. Also, the original inspiration for my work was plastic I found on my local beaches, and they always have their seam lines and different marks and bashed in the sea and things. So I wanted to have a nod to that as well.
That's incredible. Well, thank you so much, Orla, and I really hope that you have a fantastic time here in China and you really enjoy your trip to Jingdezhen.
Yeah, thank you. It was great to chat to you.
The next person I interviewed was my classmate. He now works as a designer doing R&D for a medical devices company. He's very talented. His portfolio is super impressive. I will also link him here and you should go check him out.
你现在的工作流程，你会怎么用到人工智能？
我们其实会有用到像 Midjourney 或者这样的去辅助一些视觉表达，但我觉得它现在还没有做得非常好，就还不能真正的用在产出上。但是我们其实团队会有很多人专门去研究用人工智能去辅助我们在不光是设计，还有创新的那些领域里。就比如说我们可能会用到一些，我们会自己设计一些智能体，然后来去辅助。因为我在医疗行业，然后会有这种患者关怀的。但是你像在中国，真正的就是其实中国的我们所谓的叫通量是非常大的，就是一台设备不像你们在欧美每天可能接待几个病人，一台设备可能一天要扫几百个人，技师也会没有那个闲暇去跟患者一对一的交流，所以就有一个智能体，然后它可以很耐心的跟患者去解释该怎么去摆位，该怎么去扫描，所以就会让患者的体验更好，同时没有增大就是医疗的成本，就是对医院来说他们也没有额外雇一个人这样子。对，我们会更多是关注在如何去让人工智能赋能在医疗场景里。
你觉得以后有工作和没有工作的设计师区别是什么？
有工作的设计师和没有工作的设计师，好像有一个正确答案，就是有工作的是更会使用人工智能的设计师。 很难讲，因为我觉得其实很难，大多数工作都是可以被人工智能取代的，包括 coding， 对吧？其实我觉得这个并不是一个设计师能够回答的问题，因为它太大了，是对所有人类都是一个问题。
我觉得随着人工智能的扩大普遍性，一个带来的变化是概念化设计和外观造型设计的价值会变低，然后落地性的设计的价值会变高。比如说真正能去打样的设计师，或者是离制造业比较近的设计师，都会有很大的优势。
对，但其实我们在讲人工智能的时候，现在也在聊一个概念，叫具身智能，就是像语数或者是很多机器人公司都在做像人一样的机器人。
对，
所以其实真正实体的产业会受到工业会受到多大的影响，我们也不可知。就他们，我觉得在数字产业之后，很快就会冲击到实体的工业，所以也不能说我们这些就更 traditional 一点的，就是工业设计师就更安全，但其实在这场风波下，没有人能够幸免。
最后一个问题是，现在设计产品流行的趋势，你有哪些喜欢的，然后哪些讨厌的？
我个人是很喜欢，就是一个瑞典的品牌叫 Teenage Engineering，他们做的那种，其实他们结合了像斯堪的维纳的现代主义风格，但同时也结合了意大利的俏皮，就他们鲜艳的颜色，但是产品很有趣。我觉得这种可能是一个很好的趋势，满足大家的情绪价值。对，但我不太喜欢的是更强调装饰性的，或者是更强调纯粹的。像我很讨厌的一个经典设计是游戏电脑上的 RGB 灯，就是彩色的，对那种但它显然是有自己的目标用户，所以只不过不是我。
我感觉游戏产品是走到单色的方向去，就白色灯、黄色灯。
对，像你看前2年有个品牌叫 Rogue， 他做的那种产品都是彩色的。这些年感觉他越来越就是统一自己的设计语言，他们越来越简单化，我觉得这是好的。
是的，早就中国的那些工厂，他们说能放彩色灯就要放，但是现在就是没那么愿意放，因为他们也发现非常的奇怪，
很
就比较 low， 也没有那么专业。
是的。
Even though this expo was mostly about design, I also wanted to talk to some people who really make design possible through working in supply chain, especially with raw materials. I found an interesting person who provides a perfect example of that. Let's hear what he has to say.
So, we're gonna talk in Chinglish for this one, because we got a guy here who speaks good Chinese. 你告诉我你的名字和你做的业务是什么？
我是艾瑞克，我们是做大理石，我们公司是白力士 Bellstud.
Okay. And is your company based in Shanghai or?
Shanghai. We're based here in Shanghai, and our main production is in the south near Xiamen.
And how did you get into the marble industry?
I moved here about 20 years ago, and someone I knew from back home was very interested in bringing stone from China back to New England. Okay. So he and I started a company, and I became in charge of production, and we would ship our stone from China back to New England.
Wonderful. And you said about 20 years that you've been here. What shifts have you seen in China in terms of Chinese companies relying on foreign companies to now where they're becoming more self-sufficient with like the products that they're making and their industrial technology? How have you seen that unfold?
The change here has been pretty amazing, right? 20 years ago, things were still a bit like rougher and maybe you would say cruder. But now China makes all the equipment. It's quite decent equipment. The price is very reasonable. And they've even started coming up with some innovations in the stone industry anyways that's just far beyond what happens in Italy now. Like I would say almost the cutting edge of like what's cool and interesting and happening in our industry is here in China.
So that's mainly benefited you in your work.
So when I started the company, we were mainly exporting to North America. And then 2008 came, and by 2009, no new projects had really been designed. So 2010, we just stopped that US market. I turned around, then in 2010, started doing projects in China. I started importing material from overseas and promoting to designers in China. And I basically, for a long time, I was 90% just China.
What advice do you have to young people who are starting careers in China?
Of course, learn Chinese.
Heck yeah.
When you're in China, you should be damn well learning Chinese, understanding the culture where you are. And, it's a competitive market. It's a competitive system, very competitive. So you answer your phone when it rings, and you basically really need to work pretty hard.
Agreed. Never don't reply within 5 minutes on WeChat.
Absolutely.
You learn to be quick here, don't you?
It's a very fast market. Yeah.
Thank you, Eric.
Up next, I found a really interesting booth, and the girl spoke really good English since she was educated in America at the Rhode Island School of Design. So let's have a look at her work and hear what she has to say about it.
I'm Natalie, and I work with the material silicone and make them into flower vases and jewelry.
And how long have you been doing that for?
Well, I started to experiment with these materials when I was still in university, which was like 12 years ago. And but it didn't directly become commercial. So I've been always doing it on the side while I was working for other companies. And about 3 years ago, I started to launch them into the market.
That's wonderful. And at what point did you decide it was time to start your own little brand?
Well, it's like was always a side thing until like 3 years ago. I started to think I want to make them ready for market and really like promoting them. So I started to come to this design fair.
Would you please introduce two of your vases or artworks with us?
I can do one of the jewelry, and this is actually my new series from about very recent. Like as you can see, it's very light. It's super light, but it's super dramatic and big enough if you want to match like different kind of dress and take them on holidays. It's super suitable. And so I made different colors, and they're like wonderful for wearing.
I love that silicone is kind of bouncy.
Yeah.
Like it makes everything kind of fun and silly.
Yeah. It's like a lot of people who came to the design fair, like at the beginning they couldn't like imagine touching them. They didn't want to touch because they're supposed to be ceramic or something fragile. So, but when they realize they're soft, they're so excited. Like,
it makes me really happy. I can't really describe why.
Well, it's the nature of the material.
It's like your vases, I call them silly vases because they're bouncy and they flop around.
Yeah, that makes people happy.
Yeah. Can you share another one with me?
Of course. I would like to introduce this one.
Okay.
Well, this is a medium size of my work, which is also silicone, but I'm really proud of this shape, and it takes a lot of time to build the mold.
Oh, really?
To make,
How do you make the molds?
Handmade. So everything about these pieces are handmade, including the mold, the supporting materials, everything, and even the pieces itself. It takes many layers. So each layer takes like 1 hour to 2 hours to cure. So I need to mix.
Wow.
Yeah, I need to mix with the pigment, the color pigment, with the material every time, and so it builds up gradually.
But it's very beautiful. It almost like maybe some people think that was 3D printed or computer generated, but you painstakingly made a mold.
So I use a type of clay to build the mold. It's like making sculpture, the process of making a sculpture. Yeah, absolutely.
And congratulations on your design award.
Thank you. Well, I'll see how the audience respond, and I'm hoping to come back again.
So for the next part of the video, I want to focus a bit on education. How is design taught and learned? How does it help prepare people for their careers? First, I talked with Ivan Parati, who is a professor at my university who comes from Italy. He has some interesting things to say about teaching design in China.
This is Ivan. He was one of my professors when I was studying design at XJTLU. He's still working at the school now. And we are actually sitting on one of his design projects that he made as a part of his academic practice. And it's very beautiful. It's hexagon shaped and it's purple. Ivan, I just wanted to ask you a few questions about your experience teaching here in China. As an instructor in a creative institution here in China, what sort of challenges do you face in preparing students for their careers in product design?
Hope I left not a mark, but somehow some good lesson that you can still follow in your profession. And that's always my intent while approaching the students. So to shape their, not necessarily the skill, but help them to create like a sort of a framework for kind of principle that they can keep applying while learning new things. That's usually should be the intent of a designer. So create a framework that could be adapted or reshaped according to the topic that you are going through. So each time it's a new discovery, it's a new experience, but keeping some good principle in place. And yeah, well, the challenges are mainly about the communication. Like few Chinese students, they have a fluent English, so sometimes you get a bit misunderstood, or somehow they don't want to show that they didn't understand something, so they agree on everything, but then they might do something completely opposite to what you were directing them. And another thing is that Chinese students are really good in executing things, order and directions, but when it comes to take a decision and to be a bit creative, so that lateral thinking somehow it's a bit missing. So which is something that I really like to stimulate and to try to let them develop, because you definitely need to take decision in design, and taking the right decision is not always easy. It's not always black or white. There are hundreds of different answers to the same questions. The important thing is try to find the most suitable for that specific project or for that specific case.
And what has been the most enjoyable or rewarding part of your experience as a teacher here in a design school?
Several occasions I felt really rewarded by what I'm doing, and but definitely seeing student story of success, it's one of the most important thing. Recently, one of my final year project students got a contract with the company, and I was encouraging him to approach companies and to propose his design to them and to work with the companies. And finally, after a few months, he actually got to sign a contract with the company. He got to register a patent for his design, and now he's getting his product launched in the market, and he's getting royalties for it. So that is probably one of the best work. It's a completely new journey that the student is initiating by himself. He will be by himself now. He won't be anymore with us because it's after graduation he will be there. And but it's the best way to start a new journey, a new career probably. So that was one of the recent things which felt me useful somehow.
That's very special, and I have to say I was very impressed by the resources that XJTLU was able to provide its students in preparing them for careers in design, especially with the faculty coming from so many different backgrounds that really prepared me and gave me a well-rounded education. And I think learning design in China was a very special experience. I got to see factories, I get to hear from a lot of professionals because there are many here in the country. When I was going into the experience, people said, why would you study design in China? But now that I've come out of it, I have no regrets.
Thank you, Jacob. I hope you enjoy your visit too.
There were 3 students from my school also standing at the booth. They're graduating this year. So I wanted to ask them a few questions. They were super nice and had some really good insights. But I also felt that they were somewhat lacking awareness about the reality of the industry and the job market. So let's hear what they have to say.
第一个问题是，在你们读本科的过程中，你觉得行业受了人工智能的哪些影响？
我觉得行业里对人工智能提到最多的就是说，它是否会对创意有一些取代的，或者说是取代一些设计师的工作。就是说，人工智能发展是否会限制或者说是局限一些当前，比如说各门类的设计，不只是工业设计啊，不只是产品设计，可能一些 graphic design 啊之类的都有，会不会限制他们的想象，或者限制人工设计的这种产出吧？我觉得。
你觉得以后设计师的价值是什么？
以后设计师的价值，
对，
就是给人们创造更好的条件。我觉得
通过一些什么方式会创造条件？
我觉得像比如设计产品，就是产品可以提供一些功能，但是有一些那种思辨的设计，就可以让人们反思，就反思这个环境，反思这个社会，我觉得都是给人一个很好的帮助。
现在设计行业有一个范围，一个是概念性的设计师，一个是商业化的设计师。作为一个好的设计师，怎么样去找到一个合理的平衡？
好问题。我觉得他们做商业的，有的时候会跟一些工厂去合作，去落地，对不对？然后那些工厂可能就会对他们的一些设计提出各种各样的要求，比如说太难了做不了，太贵了做不了。但做实验的那些人，他们就可以摆脱这个要求，去做他们真正想做的东西。我觉得未来那些做商业的也有自己的加工模式，他们真的可以把自己既成熟又落地又商业还有设计感的东西，通过他们自己的手做出来，而不用通过第三方。
是的。然后我觉得概念化的产品，如果想实现的话，一定要靠制造技术。
对。
你们觉得行业现在卷还是以前卷？
现在卷，现在有 AI 啊，AI 系在。
你们觉得世界上的什么国家设计师岗位是最多的？日本是有一点制造业，但是制造业没有中国多。
然后让他们设计我们做，你是这个意思吗？
所以说你怎么知道？你怎么确定日本是有比中国更多的设计师？
我不确定。
因为现在中国不是有更多的输出量吗？
我觉得在我的想法里面，中国其实并不缺乏设计师，但是日本设计师的话语，就是在国际上的设计界的话语权会更重一些。他可能因为他们有更多更著名的设计师，有更多更出名的作品，所以导致日本的设计可能他们设计师的数量并没有中国这么多，但是他们有更重的话语权，对，他们有更高的质量，或者说他们在国际上的认可度会更高。
对， 我觉得中国是一个非常适合新手设计师的国家。
确实。
虽然很卷，但是总是会有你的工作。
那我以为总是会有工作，只是新手。
对，就是有可能你的工作不是双休，有可能你加班特别离谱，但是总是会有一个能给到你工作经验的机会。
因为毕竟需求量还是很大。
对的，然后现在在西方，比如说美国和欧洲，存在的问题是很多公司的设计部门在缩小，
因为他们不需要设计。
不需要设计，然后他们要降本嘛，所以他们在裁人，然后只有最厉害的人能做设计，在美国。
对，我认为中国，你像你刚那个说法，是因为中国有比较大的人口基数，所以说总会有一些人群会 get 到你设计的那个点，就是说，如果有比较小的人口基数，我举极端例子，就10个人，如果10个人，然后只有你一个人在做设计，那可能10个人都不喜欢。但如果有10万个人，可能总有人
10个人喜欢，
对，总有那么一些人会 get 到你的设计的点。
是的，
对，所以我觉得有庞大的人口基数，有庞大的不同的这种审美的观点，然后不同的一些文化的融合，都是中国作为一个设计师新手村比较友好的地方。
还有一个经济发展起来了，然后对设计的需求就大了，而不是说一味的追求功能、设计美观啊、审美啊，它也有要求的。这一定是大家有钱赚了才会去考虑第二个问题。
对的，因为大家一定要吃上饭。
For the final interview, I met Martin Miller, who is on the faculty at Cornell University for the architecture department and is also a partner at Anti-Statics, a architecture and urban planning firm based in Beijing and New York City with a portfolio of many impressive projects. So let's hear what he has to say about the design industry in China, cross-cultural collaboration, and some other topics.
Can you tell me what you do?
I'm an architect, technologist, roboticist, and artist.
Wonderful. And tell me about your experience working here in China.
The experience working here in China has been great. The things that I'm most interested in, digital fabrication, robotics, automation, computational design, China's done an incredible job of embracing a lot of these emerging tools. They've also established themselves as kind of the leading space for the development of these. There's a pretty competitive market when it comes to digital fabrication, so it's always been good.
That's wonderful. And how have you seen things really change in the last 5 or 6 years in the Chinese market?
I think in the last 5 or 6 years, it's been nice to see a pretty strong domestic design market on the rise. China's a fairly young country. It's also a very old country. And there's a really strong young and older contingency of domestic designers who are really engaging with a lot of the processes in a super interesting way, as opposed to maybe 20 years ago where there was this influx of Western outsiders coming in. Across all fields, I think China's done an amazing job of accelerating and taking ownership over a lot of the production processes.
Do you think in the future China will rely completely on local designers, or will they still need to have some degree of diversity mixing foreign designers into their work?
I hope. I don't know. Need is a different question, but I'm hopeful that we continue to collaborate. I think that the most important thing we do globally is continue to collaborate across borders and work with each other. This is really the only way that we're going to find a lot of the solutions to the complex problems that we're facing. To me, I don't really care where the answers come from. It's about finding the answer in whatever way that we can. So I think China could probably get by operating strictly domestically, but I'm hopeful that they won't, that they continue to reach out and collaborate with others.
It seems like recently a lot of Western firms are really struggling to compete in China, where Chinese companies are producing really good high-end designs that are more tailored to the Chinese market. What strategies should Western companies take in the coming years to survive in the Chinese market and abroad, as Chinese companies, for example, BYD in the car industry, DJI in consumer electronics, Huawei, all these companies are going abroad and eating up market share that was previously had by Western companies?
I think it's about collaboration and open dialogue. This us versus them kind of mentality is not going to get the problem solved. I completely understand and admire the absolute rocket ship growth that China has developed over the last 30 years, going from a space of making to a space of creating and designing. Truly amazing. But I hope that, as they enter other markets, they're collaborative with the consumers there, as, they bring in expertise. Again, it's about solving the problems, right? And I think we have bigger problems to deal with than simply market shares and product sales and consumer rates of consumption. I think it's super important that we really engage with sustainability, climate change, material efficiency, energy efficiency. There's so many big problems coming out that we've got to work together to find these solutions. Yeah.
Awesome. I totally agree with what you said. And I think it's really important to strike that balance. And I think sometimes in China, there's still kind of a learning curve for some of the local companies when it comes to sustainability and getting on that same standard as many of the Western companies. So I really hope that the Western companies will learn to compete, and then that the Chinese companies will also become a little bit more sustainable. So
it's important that both Western and Eastern entities listen. We have to listen to each other. This is the key. We have to have a proper conversation. Take the time to listen. I think that's really the key to go forward, is not how do we find our space, but or my space or your space. It's a matter of finding all of our space together and sharing the space. So
I totally agree.
Special thanks again to everyone who did interviews with me at the expo. It was super fun to talk to people and hear their insights about the industry and design and how things are changing. I also really had a great time seeing all the booths at the event and learned a lot and gained a lot of perspective on the current market here in China. I also really had a nice time getting out of the office for a day, because it can really be a killer to sit so much and always be typing, drawing, editing on a computer. After the expo, I had some ramen with my coworkers, and then I headed over to the city center for a concert with one of my favorite groups called the Shanghai Restoration Project. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful week.
Engane, 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 engane,